They arrived like a fleeting storm and vanished just as swiftly. Tales of Vikings in North America speak of mysterious lands and unfamiliar tribes known only as the Skraelings. It was the year 1000 AD. For over 12,000 years, the Americas had remained isolated from Eurasia, with civilizations evolving separately, unaware of each other's existence. Nearly 500 years before Columbus set sail across the Atlantic, the Vikings traveled from Greenland and Iceland to the Americas possibly on multiple occasions, and their encounters were far from peaceful. Welcome back! Today we're diving into the Viking presence in North America, their conflicts with Native Americans, and the mystery behind their sudden disappearance. Erik the Red and his fateful journey. The story begins with Erik the Red, a notorious figure in Norse history. Around 980, Erik, a fiery and stubborn warrior, was exiled from Iceland for murder. But rather than accept his fate, he did the unthinkable. He sailed across the icy waters of the North Atlantic, seeking a new land, and he found it. A desolate place, cold and covered in ice. But Erik didn't call it the Land of Ice. He named it Greenland. With his persuasive skills, Erik attracted thousands of Vikings from Iceland and Norway, turning Greenland into the farthest outpost of the Norse world. But the journey didn't end there. One day, a lost merchant returned from Iceland, telling tales of a strange new land, one with forests, meadows, and open spaces, entirely different from the frozen terrain they knew. This story ignited the curiosity of Erik's son, Leif Erikson, and set the stage for history. Around 1000 AD, Leif gathered 35 men, boarded a Viking longship, and sailed westward to uncover the truth. After days adrift at sea, they spotted land, but it wasn't the frozen coast of Greenland. Instead, it was a fertile shoreline, lush with vegetation. Leif and his crew set up camp, stepping onto the land that would later be known as Vinland, now believed to be Newfoundland. During their exploration, Leif's foster father, Tyker, discovered wild berries growing in abundance. After tasting them, he realized they could be fermented into a crude wine. Tyker got drunk on it, and that's probably how Vinland got its name. There's no evidence that Leif encountered the natives during this brief stay. However, back in Greenland, the Vikings had already met the Thule people, ancestors of the Inuit, trading ivory and furs for iron and copper. Archaeological remains of the Thule show Viking-style carvings and tools they couldn't have made themselves. The Vikings referred to these people as Skraelings, a term possibly derived from the Old Norse word skra, meaning dry skin, a reference to the fur coats worn by the Thule. After a short stay, Leif and his crew returned to Greenland, bringing wood and wild berries back. Their journey, though brief, opened the door for further expeditions and encounters with the native peoples. Thorvald Erikson, the first encounter, the Viking exploration, didn't stop with Leif. A few years later, Thorvald Erikson, Leif's younger brother, decided to test his luck. He led a crew back to Vinland, where they spent the harsh winter, surviving by hunting and fishing. In the spring, they set out to explore further along the coastline. One day, during a boating trip, they discovered a group of indigenous people sleeping under overturned boats, possibly ancestors of the Inuit or another tribe. Out of fear, or a warrior's instinct, Thorvald ordered an attack. 8 people were killed immediately, but the 9th managed to escape into the forest. This action quickly led to consequences. The survivor returned to warn their tribe, and soon, a group of indigenous warriors appeared for revenge. A fierce battle erupted, with arrows raining down from the Skraelings. During the fight, Thorvald was struck by an arrow in his side. Realizing it was fatal, he ordered a retreat. Thorvald died soon after, leaving the crew in confusion and uncertainty. They stayed another winter before returning to Greenland. carrying with them the story of a land both beautiful and perilous. Thorvald's death was the first sign that Vinland was not an easy land to conquer, even for seasoned Viking warriors. Thorfinn Karlsefni, the dream of colonization shattered years later. Thorfinn Karlsefni, a wealthy merchant with noble ancestry, sought to establish a permanent colony in the New World. He organized the largest Viking expedition yet, 3 ships, 250 people including men, women, and children, along with livestock, seeds, and tools, to build a sustainable community. They departed Greenland around 1010, sailing farther south than ever before, reaching a place known as Stromfjord. Stromfjord, according to sagas, was a land with powerful currents, a natural harbor, jagged cliffs, and flocks of seabirds. Today, researchers still debate its exact location from Meadows in Newfoundland to Bay of Fundy in Canada. At first, everything went smoothly. Thorfinn's crew traded peacefully with the Skraelings, who offered furs in exchange for red cloth and cow's milk, things they had never seen before. But this fragile peace didn't last. One day, a cow from the Viking camp escaped and ran wild, causing panic among the natives. They fled, but later returned, armed. A fierce battle broke out. The Skraelings used slingshots and small catapults to hurl stones and arrows at the Vikings. Though they fought valiantly, Thorfinn realized they couldn't withstand the overwhelming numbers of the indigenous people. In a desperate move, Thorfinn ordered a retreat. They abandoned Stromfjord and sailed back to Greenland, ending their dream of colonizing the New World. No other Norsemen would return to North America for centuries, leaving the New World silent until Columbus arrived nearly 500 years later. Archaeological evidence, Meadows, and the Goddard coin, the traces of the Vikings in North America, have nearly been erased by time, but a few pieces of evidence remain. In 1960, Helgi and Anne Stein Ingstad discovered Meadows on the northern tip of Newfoundland, confirming it as the only Viking settlement in North America. Excavations revealed crucial evidence: 8 earth houses, an iron forge, something the natives couldn't have made, and a boat frame suggesting this area was a repair station for transatlantic voyages. The most significant discovery was a bronze pin used by Vikings to fasten cloaks. Similar pins have been found in Scotland and Ireland, confirming the site's Nordic origin. However, Meadows appears to have been a temporary stop, not a permanent settlement. Further south, in 1957, an amateur archaeologist found a coin at Brooklyn Beach, Maine. Initially thought to be a medieval English penny, it was later identified as a Norse coin minted between 1065 and 1903. The coin was discovered with hundreds of arrowheads, possibly suggesting the Vikings influenced the natives' archery. The Vinland sagas, history or myth. The sagas that recount these voyages, the saga of Erik the Red and the saga of the Greenlanders, were written 200 years after the events of 1000 AD. They describe 3 lands: Helluland, likely Baffin Island; Markland, possibly Labrador; and Vinland, likely Newfoundland. While the sagas differ in details, they paint a picture of Viking attempts to settle in North America. Stromfjord remains a mystery, with researchers proposing locations from Meadows to Buzzards Bay or Long Island Sound. The sagas are a priceless historical resource, but they are mixed with myth, leaving us to wonder how much is true. The disappearance of the Vikings, why couldn't they stay? The biggest question remains, why couldn't the Vikings establish a permanent settlement in North America? Several theories have been suggested. Perhaps they lacked the people or supplies to sustain a colony. Maybe constant conflicts with the Skraelings wore them down. But the most compelling reason relates to the weather. When Leif Thorvald and Thorfinn arrived. The North Atlantic was in the medieval warm period, with mild temperatures and little sea ice, perfect for voyages. But by the 12th century, the Little Ice Age began. Temperatures plummeted, ice blocked sea routes, and life in Greenland became harsher. Food shortages and disease caused Iceland's population to drop drastically. With Greenland isolated and Vinland too distant, the Vikings could no longer maintain their settlements. Their journey to North America was brief, but what remains are the sagas, perhaps partly true, partly fictional, or a mixture of both. The physical evidence is limited. A small settlement at Meadows, a brooch, and a coin found in Maine. Yet this story still captivates the imagination. What if they had stayed? Would North America today speak Norse? History could have unfolded very differently.